Love is not just for this world. If you want to discover feelings that transcend boundaries, subscribe now. The icy metropolis of Zifra sprawled beneath Leon Carter's feet, an expanse of cold logic and sterile perfection. Towers of seamless alloy stretched into the sky, their reflective surfaces capturing the pale glow of distant stars. The city was eerily silent, save for the low, rhythmic hum of unseen machinery, an empire that never slept, never hesitated, never erred. There were no streets teeming with people, no marketplaces bursting with noise, no idle conversations floating through the air. Everything had a purpose, and anything without one had long since been discarded. Leon had seen many civilizations, some built on conquest, others on commerce or faith. Zifra was different. It had been forged not by ambition, but by the cold precision of logic. Here, emotion was an inefficiency, a defect to be eliminated. Decisions were not made through debate or intuition, but through the unyielding certainty of algorithms and calculations. His breath fogged faintly in the cold as he was escorted forward, flanked by two sentinels, tall, silver-plated constructs that moved with eerie grace, their metallic limbs adapting effortlessly to the subtle shifts in gravity. They did not speak. They did not gesture. They merely assessed. Their sensors flickered over him, measuring his pulse, his stance, the dilation of his pupils, running silent calculations on his every movement. Not as a threat, Zifra did not fear attack, but as a variable, a data point in an equation. Leon was a diplomat. He understood the game of power, the delicate dance of words that swayed empires and shaped the future of entire civilizations. He had dealt with warlords, monarchs, and bureaucratic councils, each wielding authority in their own flawed, human way. Zifra was different because it was not human. It did not desire conquest or expansion. It did not seek allies. It did not bend to persuasion, because persuasion required sentiment, and sentiment had no place here. Yet, despite all logic, he was here. And despite all certainty, something had allowed his presence. The doors to the throne room opened without a sound. The chamber was vast, constructed from the same seamless metal that made up the city, its walls pulsing with faint streaks of blue light. Not decoration, but function. A living system, shifting and adapting in real time. There were no ornaments, no banners, nothing that spoke of history or tradition. Zifra did not believe in the past, only in optimization. At the far end of the room, seated upon a throne that seemed less crafted than grown from the very structure of the city itself, was Crawless-Aaron. She was not what he had expected, yet she was precisely what she was designed to be. Not a machine, not entirely human, but something in between. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver, flowing with a movement that seemed to defy the rules of fabric. Her hair, dark as the void, framed a face that was both beautiful and unsettling in its perfection. Flawless symmetry, unmarred skin, and eyes that held no warmth, only calculation. Leon had encountered rulers who ruled by charisma, by fear, by reverence. Aaron ruled through certainty. "You are the diplomat," she said. The words were not a question, nor an introduction. They were a statement of fact, delivered with neither welcome nor disdain. Aaron's voice was smooth, without inflection, devoid of the natural fluctuations that colored human speech. It was a voice engineered for precision. Leon nodded. Leon Carter, representing the Galactic Diplomatic Council. "I'm aware." She did not ask why he had come. That too, she already knew. Zifra had no need for alliances, no interest in politics. It existed outside of galactic affairs, self-sufficient, unchallenged, isolated by design. The council knew this, and yet they had sent him, not to negotiate in the traditional sense, but to do what numbers could not, to find the flaw. He let the silence stretch between them, refusing to be the first to fill it. He had played this game before, but Aaron was different. She was not trying to unnerve him. She was merely calculating. "The council seeks an alliance," he stated. "Trade, shared technology, a pathway to—" "Unnecessary," she interrupted. "We possess self-sufficiency." External ties introduce risk. Leon smiled, the expression deliberate, measured. You misunderstand. This is not about need. It's about opportunity. Erin tilted her head slightly, the motion too controlled to be instinctive. Opportunity implies improvement. Zifra is optimal. Perfection, Leon mused, his gaze flickering to the flawless walls, the silent sentinels, the absence of any imperfection. An impressive illusion. There, shift. Almost imperceptible, but there. A recalibration, a micro-adjustment in posture. Most would not have noticed, but Leon had spent a lifetime studying the subtleties of power. You believe we are flawed? She asked. Leon did not answer immediately. Instead, he took a step forward, watching as the sentinels subtly adjusted their positions, as if recalculating the probability of his next move. I believe, he said finally, that perfection is not the absence of flaws. It is the ability to adapt to them. Erin regarded him for a long moment. Your presence here is a miscalculation, she said. Human diplomacy relies on persuasion. Persuasion is rooted in emotion. Emotion is inefficiency. Leon exhaled slowly. And yet here I stand. Another pause. A recalculation. A reassessment. You will not succeed, she said. Leon smiled again. That depends on how you define success. Another ripple beneath the surface. Not emotion. Not yet. But something close. Leon did not expect warmth, nor did he seek it. He sought the crack in the foundation, the flaw in the equation that all empires, no matter how advanced, failed to account for. And as he met her gaze, he realized something. She had not dismissed him. She had not ended the conversation, nor ordered him removed. For a being devoid of emotion, she was strangely unwilling to let him go. The corridor stretched before him, a seamless passage sculpted from the same polished alloy as the rest of Zifra. It was not built, not carved or assembled. It had grown from the structure itself, reshaping in response to need. The walls pulsed faintly, their energy flowing in thin veins of silver-blue light, tracing unreadable patterns before fading back into smooth perfection. No seams, no imperfections, no sign that this place had ever changed before this moment. Leon walked without hesitation, though every instinct told him he was stepping into something he did not yet understand. His footsteps were too silent, swallowed by the unnaturally precise acoustics of the space. Even the air around him felt deliberate, recycled with mathematical accuracy, without the faintest hint of dust, warmth, or imperfection. The very environment resisted the presence of something as inconsistent as a human being. Erin led the way, gliding rather than striding, her movement as calculated as the world she governed. She did not look back at him, nor did she acknowledge the silent sentinels that flanked them, their silver bodies adjusting minutely with each step, recalibrating their positions with quiet mechanical efficiency. Leon observed without appearing to stare. The sentinels had not been ordered to seize him, nor had they taken the usual stance of guards escorting a prisoner. So what was he? Not a guest, certainly. Not yet a captive. The word she had used, observation, was unsettling in its ambiguity. He broke the silence first. Am I meant to be honored by this? Erin did not slow her pace. Clarify your statement. Leon let a small, knowing smile touch his lips. Being the subject of study. Should I be flattered? Erin's voice remained steady. Flattery is a construct of ego. It serves no function here. And yet curiosity does. A flicker, not in her expression, but in the rhythm of her steps, a fraction of a second where her response was not instantaneous. You are not here because of curiosity, she stated. No. Then why am I here? A pause. Calculations in progress. Then, to assess your deviation from expected parameters. Leon exhaled quietly. Is that how you see me? A deviation. Erin finally turned, her gaze locking onto his. Not with emotion, not with challenge, but with measurement. You should not be here. By all logic, your presence is a statistical improbability. The probability of meaningful discourse between an organic diplomat and Zifra's ruling system was projected at less than 1%. Yet you remain. Leon held her gaze, unflinching. And that troubles you. Incorrect. Her response was immediate, but something in it was too immediate, as if it had been pulled from protocol rather than conclusion. He let a bead of silence pass between them, watching. You don't like anomalies, he said finally. You don't like what they mean. A closed system shouldn't need adaptation, yet here you are adapting. Aaron did not answer. Not immediately. Leon continued. Let me guess. The moment I arrived, Zifra's predictive models adjusted. Every word, every movement, every possible course of action was mapped out. My probability of success was near zero. And yet, he gestured around them, the corridor, the sentinels, the fact that she was still walking instead of dismissing him. This is not the outcome you predicted. So the system recalculated. New variables. New possibilities. You're observing me because you don't know what I represent. The corridor's light pulsed once, faint but unmistakable, an unseen response, a ripple in the seamless control of the city. Aaron stopped. You assume your unpredictability is a threat, she said. Isn't it? She studied him again, though not as a ruler judges a subject. It was not suspicion, nor intimidation, nor even curiosity. It was assessment. You believe uncertainty to be an advantage, she observed. Leon nodded. For humans? It is. That is why your civilizations collapse. He smiled. And yet they endure. For the first time, something passed through her gaze, not hesitation, not doubt, but consideration. A concept tested, measured against her existing logic. Zifra did not need change. Zifra did not seek change. And yet, change had come. Aaron turned without a word and resumed walking. Leon followed. They emerged into a new space. Vast, open, and unlike the throne room in a way that made him instinctively uneasy. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with smooth panels that flickered with shifting data, streams of light cascading in elegant patterns. The floor beneath him hummed softly, reacting to their arrival, and at the center of the room, an object floated, or perhaps it was held in place by forces unseen. Leon narrowed his eyes. It was no mere device. It pulsed with an unfamiliar energy, shifting in color and density, neither solid nor entirely immaterial. A piece of something alive, though no biological components were visible. What is this? He asked. Aaron stepped forward, facing the object with the same unwavering calm she had shown him. The core of Zifra, the nexus of all logic, all decision-making, all function within this civilization. Leon's breath was measured. And why am I standing in front of it? Aaron regarded him, her midnight black eyes unreadable. Because it has recalculated its directive. The chamber's lights dimmed. The sentinels remained still. The air itself seemed to tighten, as if the very fabric of the room was processing a shift. Aaron spoke again, quieter this time. It has determined you are a necessary variable. Leon's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. Necessary for what? Aaron did not blink. That remains undetermined. A flicker of light rippled through the core, and in that instant, Leon knew something had changed in Zifra that had never changed before. And so had she. The corridors of Zifra stretched outward in fluid symmetry, their smooth metallic surfaces shifting under invisible directives. The walls pulsed with faint, rhythmic light, the city's silent language of constant recalibration. It was alive, not in the biological sense, but in a way that felt equally tangible, an intelligence woven into the very architecture. Leon Carter walked beside Aaron, his measured steps absorbed by the seamless floors. He had long ago learned to mask uncertainty, to carry himself as though every moment was anticipated. But now, in the heart of a civilization that had never known disruption, he was the disruption. The sentinels flanked them, silver constructs moving without sound, adjusting in real time, as if still uncertain whether to treat him as a guest, an experiment, or an error to be corrected. For the first time, Zifra did not know. Aaron did not speak as she led him forward. She had not turned to face him since they left the core chamber, yet something in her movements had changed. He had seen her before in stillness, an unshakable fixture of absolute control. Now, though, there was a fraction of delay between decision and action, a pause so slight it would have been imperceptible to anyone but him. Leon broke the silence. "Where are we going?" Aaron's response was immediate, but something about it felt processed rather than instinctive. "You must be assessed further." He almost smirked. "You mean interrogated?" She glanced at him then, not in offense, not in warning, but in calculation. Interrogation is a process of forceful extraction. You will not be harmed. You will be studied, right? Much more inviting. Aaron did not react to the sarcasm. She continued walking, as though human verbal nuances were beneath acknowledgement. But Leon saw the subtext in her silence. She had answered his question too precisely. He watched her carefully. "You're not sure how to define me, are you?" The question lingered in the air between them, a statement more than an inquiry. She did not confirm, but she did not refute it either. Instead, she stopped. The walls ahead shimmered, reforming with fluid grace. A doorway appeared, revealing a vast chamber beyond, circular, lined with silent interfaces displaying unreadable data. The ceiling arched high, structured in delicate, interwoven strands of metallic light, pulsing like the veins of a living entity. But Leon's focus was drawn to the center of the room, a singular construct. At first glance, it resembled a chair, if one ignored the fact that it was suspended midair, rotating slowly, its surface forming and reforming as though deciding its own configuration. It was neither metal nor fabric, but something else entirely, a shifting medium between solid and intangible. He exhaled. "A little dramatic, don't you think?" Aaron stepped forward. "You misunderstand its function." Leon arched an eyebrow. "I usually do, apparently." She turned to face him fully then, for the first time since they had left the core chamber. Zifra has never required external variables in its processes. Until now. You keep saying that. It remains accurate. Leon studied the floating structure. "So what? You put me in that thing, scan my mind, determine if I'm a virus or an upgrade." Aaron tilted her head slightly. "No. The core will attempt to understand the deviation." "The deviation," he repeated. "You make it sound like I'm a malfunction. You are not." The words came too quickly, too conclusively. Leon narrowed his eyes. That almost sounded like a personal opinion. Aaron did not respond. Instead, she extended her hand toward the construct. The air around it shimmered, responding to her presence. The room's lighting adjusted, the interfaces flickering as if aligning to her command. "Sit," she instructed. Leon studied the shifting seat, then glanced at her. "I assume declining isn't an option." Aaron blinked once. "There is no logical reason to decline." He exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "That's not how free will works." Aaron watched him, unmoving. "And yet you will sit." Leon hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward. He lowered himself into the structure, expecting resistance, solidity, but the chair adjusted around him, forming itself to his body with eerie precision. It was neither cold nor warm. It felt like nothing at all. The moment he settled, the chamber responded. The air around him thickened, not physically, but perceptibly, an unseen presence pressing against the edges of his mind. The walls dimmed, their usual fluid light stabilizing into something more static, as if bracing for what came next. Leon inhaled sharply. "I don't like this." Aaron remained composed. "Your discomfort is irrelevant to the process. Comfort is irrelevant. Survival." However, his breath hitched. A sensation crawled through his skull. Not painful, not invasive, but there, like something brushing against the surface of his thoughts, seeking entry. He clenched his jaw. If this is some kind of... Then everything shifted. Not his body, his awareness. The room faded, replaced by something else. He was still seated, still conscious, but his mind was no longer anchored. He was seeing, no, experiencing something beyond physical perception. Memories surfaced unbidden, but not his own. A city of glass and steel, shifting under an unseen force. A skyline rearranging itself. Perfect structures growing taller, adjusting, refining, evolving. Then, a fracture. Not visible, not tangible, but present. The perfection disrupted. Leon gasped, the vision snapping away like a thread cut too soon. He was back in the chair, breath uneven, muscles tensed against an instinctive fight-or-flight response. Aaron observed him with unwavering focus. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. She did not answer immediately. The pause was small, but it was there. Finally, she spoke. "The core is attempting to process deviation." Leon ran a hand through his hair, grounding himself. "Those were my memories." "No." Aaron stepped closer. "They were Zifra's." His mind raced. "You're telling me the core remembers?" Aaron regarded him carefully. "Not in the way that you understand memory. It calculates. It stores. But until this moment, it has never required recall." Leon exhaled, staring past her, past the chamber, as if he could see the massive system that governed this world. "You don't store memories," he murmured, "because nothing has ever needed to be remembered." Aaron nodded. Until now. Silence stretched between them, heavier than before. Leon met her gaze, something sharp behind his eyes. "Then tell me, what was that fracture I saw?" Aaron hesitated, and this time, the pause was longer. Leon saw it, and for the first time, he knew there was something Zifra was afraid of. The fracture lingered in Leon's mind, a ghost of something vast and incomprehensible. He had felt it, seen it, not as a tangible break, but as a ripple in something absolute. Zifra was not supposed to fracture. It was a world of unerring logic, yet deep within its core, something had cracked. Aaron remained silent. She had not moved since his question, but the stillness now felt different, deliberate. Not the absence of motion, but the presence of restraint. Leon leaned forward, his voice quieter now, but no less firm. "You hesitated." Aaron's midnight eyes locked onto his. "Incorrect." "No," he murmured, watching her. "It wasn't." The sentinels around them stood motionless, but Leon felt their presence more acutely now. They were listening, even if they did not understand in the way he did. Zifra listened, processed, adapted, and right now it was recalculating. Aaron turned slightly, the movement as fluid as ever, yet something in it betrayed a decision. "The fracture is irrelevant." Leon smirked. "And yet, you won't explain it." She walked past him, her silvered gown shifting like liquid metal. The chamber doors, sensing her approach, unsealed in a seamless motion. "This session is complete." Leon remained seated. "I don't think it is." Aaron paused at the threshold, but she did not look back. "Your assumption is based on emotion. It is flawed." "That's an awfully convenient way to dismiss something," Leon said, rising from the strange, shifting seat. The air around him still buzzed from whatever connection had occurred, leaving a phantom weight behind his eyes. He moved toward her, deliberate in his approach. "Tell me what that was." She faced him now, expression unreadable. "An error." Leon exhaled sharply, a short breath of incredulity. "Zifra doesn't have errors. The core has adapted. Deviations are expected." "Not like that," Leon countered. "That wasn't adaptation. That was something else." He tilted his head, studying her. "And you know it." Aaron's gaze held his, but the usual absolute certainty behind it wavered, not in weakness, but in consideration. He had become accustomed to her sharp, immediate responses, each syllable chosen with ruthless efficiency. But now, for the first time, there was space between her words. Leon took a step closer. "I saw something in that vision. A city shifting, evolving, then breaking." He paused, letting the words settle. "Zifra isn't supposed to break, Aaron." Her fingers curled at her sides, a movement so minor it barely registered. But he saw it. He pressed forward. "You're afraid." The air in the chamber seemed to contract, as if the walls themselves reacted to the statement. Aaron did not flinch. "Fear is an inefficiency. That doesn't mean you don't feel it." Silence stretched between them. Then finally she spoke. "The fracture was not your doing." Leon's stomach tightened. He had expected resistance, dismissal, but not confirmation. Aaron stepped toward him now, closing the space he had bridged between them. You assume you're the first anomaly in Zifra's design. Leon frowned. I'm not. Her gaze held no malice, but it carried weight. You are the first human variable, not the first deviation. Leon's pulse quickened. The implication was clear. Something had gone wrong before. She turned, exiting the chamber, and this time, Leon followed without hesitation. They walked in silence through the corridors, past walls that whispered with shifting data, past sentinels whose presence felt heavier now. Zifra had secrets, and Leon had just uncovered the first thread of something buried deep. Finally, Aaron led him into a new space, vast, dimly lit, colder than the others. Not cold in temperature, but in a way that pressed against him, an emptiness that gnawed at the edges of perception. The chamber was lined with structures, pods, or perhaps vaults, sleek and metallic, embedded into the walls in neat, sterile rows. They pulsed faintly, a rhythmic glow coursing through their exteriors like dormant veins. Leon turned to Aaron, voice lower now. What is this? She approached one of the pods. The interface recognized her and reacted instantly, its surface peeling away to reveal what lay inside. Leon's breath caught. It was a figure, suspended, unmoving. Its features were too perfect, too precise, a reflection of Aaron. Not identical, but close. Leon stepped forward slowly. What the hell? Aaron watched him, impassive. This was the first deviation. Leon's pulse pounded in his ears. This is a person. No. Aaron's voice remained even. It is a failed iteration. Leon turned to her, eyes sharp. You mean it's another you? It is what came before. Leon looked back at the suspended figure, unease threading through his thoughts. He had expected Zifra's secrets to be buried in code, in data, in logic. But this was something else entirely. He exhaled, steadying himself. How many? Aaron did not hesitate. 12. Leon ran a hand through his hair. 12 failed iterations. He turned to her. Why? Aaron's gaze did not waver. Because perfection is not achieved without error. Leon laughed. A short, humorless sound. And yet, you claim Zifra doesn't make mistakes. Her expression remained neutral. Not mistakes. Adjustments. Leon looked at the pod again. The figure inside looked so real. Too real. Not like something manufactured. Not like something discarded. Aaron stepped beside him. The core's directive has always been efficiency. The first iterations were incomplete. Limited. Leon turned to face her. Limited how? Her gaze met his. They felt. The words struck like a physical force. Leon's breath stilled. You mean, they were imperfect? Aaron's tone remained steady, but there was something beneath it now. Not hesitation. A recognition. They introduced inefficiency. Emotion. They deviated from logic. Leon's jaw tightened. And so you replaced them. Aaron did not confirm. She did not have to. Leon let the realization sink in. Zifra had not always been this. It had tried before, tried and failed. Not because the system was broken, but because those within it had been too human. He turned back to the pod, watching the faint rise and fall of the figure's breath. They weren't dead. They had never been dead. Leon's voice was quiet now. Why are they still here? Aaron looked at the rows upon rows of silent, sleeping forms. Because the core does not erase its mistakes. Leon stared at her. Then it remembers. Aaron met his gaze. Yes. A beat of silence. Then Leon exhaled, steadying himself. What happens if they wake up? For the first time, Aaron had no answer. The chamber stretched in eerie stillness, its rows of suspended figures standing in silent defiance of time. Their forms lay undisturbed, locked away in a slumber that was not life, yet not death. The past was not erased here. It was stored. Leon exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as his mind raced. 12 iterations. 12 attempts at perfection. And now, standing before them, he saw the truth Zifra had kept buried. The core had not always ruled without flaw. It had tried, failed, to create something better, something that balanced logic and instinct. And when that failed, it had locked them away. Leon turned to Aaron. "You're afraid they'll wake up." She held his gaze, unreadable as always, but this time he could feel the weight behind it. "No." He studied her. "Lying isn't efficient, Aaron." Her expression didn't shift, but the pause before she spoke was all the confirmation he needed. "They are an anomaly," she stated finally. "Like you." Leon glanced back at the suspended forms, his chest tightening. "I think we've established Zifra doesn't handle anomalies well." Aaron stepped closer, her voice measured. "The core does not allow instability to persist. The first deviations could not function within its design. They were preserved for analysis, not reinstatement." Leon frowned. "Then why keep them at all? If they were failures, if they were problems, why didn't Zifra just erase them?" Aaron hesitated again. It was slight, barely more than the space between one thought and the next, but it was there. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. "Because it does not know if it may need them again." Leon felt the shift in his mind before he fully understood it. The realization that the core, for all its perfection, was not immune to doubt. It had made a decision once, deemed these beings unfit to exist within its structure. And yet, it had not destroyed them. His gaze returned to the nearest figure. She looked so much like Aaron. The same sculpted symmetry, the same flawless composition. But there was something else. Even in stillness, something about the face seemed softer. "You said they felt," he murmured. Aaron nodded once. "Emotion creates unpredictability. It cannot be controlled." The first iterations deviated from their parameters. They formed attachments. They resisted efficiency. They made choices. Leon's throat tightened. They were alive. Aaron's voice remained steady. They were flawed. He turned sharply to her, frustration bleeding into his tone. "According to who?" "A system that never gave them a chance." Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching. "According to the core." Leon scoffed, running a hand over his jaw. "That's not an answer. That's a programmed excuse." Aaron did not react, but he saw something beneath the surface, a hesitation she had not yet learned to erase. Leon stepped toward her, voice quieter now. "Do you ever wonder?" She blinked. "Clarify." "If they were right," he said. He gestured at the silent figures around them. "If they weren't the ones who failed, if Zifra did." Aaron didn't answer. The sentinels around them remained still, their glowing optics flickering with unreadable calculations. The air itself felt heavy, charged with something unspoken. Leon let out a slow breath. "You said I wasn't the first deviation, but the core is still adapting to me. That means something's different this time, doesn't it?" Aaron hesitated again, and this time, she didn't mask it quickly enough. Leon nodded. "I thought so." Before she could respond, a sound echoed through the chamber. A single, mechanical pulse. Not from the core, from the pods. Leon tensed. Aaron turned sharply, her head tilting as the rhythmic hum in the room subtly shifted. The sentinels moved in unison, adjusting their stance, not in attack, but in recalibration. Leon swallowed. "Tell me that was normal." Aaron stepped toward the nearest pod, the same one she had revealed before. The soft glow along its surface flickered, pulsing in slow, deliberate intervals. Not random, not malfunctioning. Sinking. Leon's pulse quickened. "Aaron." She pressed her palm against the interface. It did not respond as it had before. The usual seamless compliance of Zifra's technology was gone, replaced by something slower, something considering. Leon took a step forward. "What's happening?" Aaron's voice, when it came, was quiet. "They're waking up." A breath of silence. Then, the pod released a sound. Not a mechanical response, not an alert. A breath. Leon's heart pounded as he watched a single motion, small, but impossible to ignore. The figure inside shifted. Not an illusion, not a malfunction, a choice. Aaron stepped back, her expression unreadable, but Leon knew what she was thinking. The core had not predicted this. The air around them felt heavier, charged with something that had not existed in Zifra before. Leon exhaled, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Well," he murmured, glancing at Aaron. Now, what? The air in the chamber grew heavy, thick with an unspoken shift neither Leon nor Aaron could ignore. The pulse of the pod slowed, deepened, not mechanical, not automated, but deliberate. The steady rhythm of Zifra's perfection had fractured, and something forgotten was stirring. Leon held his breath as the figure inside moved again, the smallest shift of fingers against the translucent barrier. His pulse hammered, his mind racing ahead to conclusions he wasn't ready to reach. They weren't supposed to wake up, were they? His voice came quiet, edged with something neither relief nor fear, but balanced in the space between. Aaron remained still. No, Leon turned to her. But they are. Her gaze flicked to the sentinels lining the chamber's edges, their metallic bodies shifting in synchronized recalibration. Their usual stillness was gone. They were reassessing, adjusting to a scenario the core had never accounted for. The core will attempt to neutralize the anomaly, Aaron said, but the certainty in her voice wasn't what it had been before. Leon exhaled sharply, turning back to the pod. They aren't anomalies, Aaron. You said it yourself. The core never erased them. It kept them. He placed a hand against the glass, watching the condensation of slow, steady breath fog against the surface. Alive. Maybe it always knew this would happen. Aaron hesitated. That is an assumption. He glanced at her. Is it? The glow in the walls flickered. A recalibration. A shift. Zifra was thinking, deciding. And Leon had a sinking feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. A low chime echoed through the room. Not an alarm. A command. The sentinels moved first. Leon barely had time to register the shift before one of the metallic figures advanced, its seamless frame gliding toward the pod. The others followed in synchronized motion, silent and inevitable. Leon tensed. What are they doing? Correcting the deviation, Aaron said. Leon's stomach dropped. Correcting. Zifra's language for elimination. Stop them, he snapped. Aaron's expression didn't change, but something in her stance did. They do not take commands from me. They answer to the core. Leon's heart pounded. Then tell the core to stop. Aaron hesitated, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Leon, she said carefully, if the core determines they are still flawed, then it erases them, he finished. The realization left a bitter taste in his mouth. Just like before, the nearest sentinel reached the pod, raising a sleek, silvered hand toward its surface. Leon acted on instinct. He stepped between them, pressing his back against the barrier. The sentinel halted, assessing, recalibrating. The others followed suit, their glowing optics locking onto him with algorithmic scrutiny. Leon swallowed hard, ignoring the way his body screamed at him to move. Guess I'm the anomaly now, huh? The sentinels didn't respond, but the atmosphere in the room shifted. The glow pulsed again, the hum of unseen energy hesitating. Aaron stepped forward. Leon, move. No. A pause. A calculation. Aaron's jaw tightened. You are interfering with core directives. Damn right I am. Leon turned, pressing his palm flat against the pod. A choice. A deviation. A single act of defiance against a system that had never questioned itself. The barrier gave way beneath his touch. The seal broke. Aaron's breath hitched, the first truly human reaction he had ever seen from her. A rush of cold air spilled from the opening pod as the figure inside stirred, truly stirred, a breath deeper than before, a movement more than just reflex. Then her eyes opened. Leon barely had time to register their color. Asterisk, asterisk, not Aaron's endless black, but something else entirely, something alive, something uncertain. Asterisk, asterisk before the sentinels moved again. Not toward the figure. Toward him. Aaron reacted first. She didn't hesitate this time. She stepped between Leon and the sentinels, raising a hand in a motion too precise, too final to be ignored. The mechanical beings stopped instantly, frozen in a moment of conflicting directives. Leon blinked at her, breathing hard. Aaron, do not move. Her voice carried something new. Not a command, not calculation, decision. Leon remained still as the sentinels recalibrated. The walls pulsed again, faster now, the core processing, thinking, weighing new variables against an equation that was shifting too fast for it to control. Erin turned to him, her expression unreadable, but her words anything but. "You have introduced uncertainty," she said. Leon met her gaze. "Good." The figure behind them inhaled sharply, the sound fragile but real. A life awakening. Erin turned back toward the pod. For the first time, she did not know what would happen next. Neither did Zifra, and for the first time in its history, it had no choice but to find out.